Okay, so if you spend any time at all, like trying to keep up with music online, you know how it is. It's just a flood of stuff.
Artificially overwhelming.
Especially on YouTube. You've got reaction videos, which are like a whole world in themselves. And trying to figure out who's actually got something smart to say versus who's just, playing the game for clicks.
Yeah.
It's tough.
Yeah, it really is sorting the signal from the noise.
Exactly. So today, we're going to try and cut through some of that noise. We're diving into this whole scene, YouTube music reactions, and looking at something pretty interesting. What looks like a real double standard against independent artists. Our source material for this is called Excerpts from YouTube Music Reactions, Unmasking the Double Standard Against Indie Artists.
Right.
So yeah, our goal here is basically to unpack what's really going on, see if there are patterns in how people critique stuff, and, figure out what that actually means for the artist trying to make it. Let's get into it.
Very good.
So first off, the source points to this clear divide happening in these reaction videos, like a real difference between thoughtful critique and stuff that just feels, well, performative. Like it's just for show, for engagement. What's driving that, you think?
Well, it's fascinating, actually. The source suggests it's not just one thing, but like several factors all coming together, and it hits independent artists particularly hard.
How so?
For starters, they're often seen as low-risk targets. That's the phrase used. Basically, they don't usually have these huge mobilized fan bases ready to jump down a critic's throat.
Ah, okay. So less backlash.
Exactly. Less risk for the reactor, which means critics can be, well, pretty aggressive without worrying too much about pushback.
Right.
And that ties into the next point, narrative control. Think about it, an indie artist puts their music out there, right? But they probably don't have a big PR team shaping their image.
No, definitely not.
So a critic can just kind of make up a story about them, say they're lazy or unoriginal or whatever. And because there's no big counter-narrative, that label can stick, even if it's totally unfair.
Wow, yeah. That's rough.
And then there's the whole algorithmic drama thing. You know how platforms work? They often push content that gets strong reactions.
Like comments, shares, controversy sells, basically.
Precisely. So a really harsh, maybe even unfair critique can generate a ton of engagement. The algorithm sees that, thinks, ooh, popular, and shows it to more people. It becomes this, like, feedback loop.
Even if the criticism itself is shaky.
Yeah, even if it's not well-founded. And finally, the source mentions something a bit more psychological: ego and projection.
Meaning?
Well, maybe some critics are perhaps artists themselves who haven't quite made it, and maybe unconsciously tearing down someone else, especially someone independent, makes them feel, I don't know, a bit better, superior maybe.
It's complex.
That adds a whole other layer to it. And all this harsh scrutiny leads to something the source calls the fame skill fallacy. What's that about? Yeah, this is really key. It's this damaging assumption that if an artist isn't famous, they just must not be very good.
Oh, right. Like fame equals talent.
Exactly, which totally ignores how the music industry actually works, Success often comes down to marketing, luck, not just raw talent.
Yeah, we all know artists who are amazing but not famous, and vice versa.
Right, and this fallacy means independent artists, the ones often writing, producing, mixing their own stuff, get held to this impossible standard, sometimes even higher than mainstream acts who have whole teams behind them.
So their DIY ethic, their authenticity, almost works against them in this context.
Ironically, yeah, it can become a liability because they don't have that slick professional machine making everything seem perfect. The source isn't saying famous artists aren't skilled, obviously, but that the lack of fame shouldn't automatically mean a lack of skill. It's about challenging that bias.
Okay, that makes sense. It's a warped way of judging art.
Definitely. So if the whole fame thing is kind of skewed, how do these YouTube critics actually approach the music itself?
Well, that's where we see this big split the source talks about, the reactor divide.
Right, the two camps.
Yeah.
So on one side, you've got the performative critics. The source names like Triple T, Chop Easy, Hickory Short, Menace from MTP. And their style, it seems, is really built around drama, controversy, call-outs, boofs, really over-the-top critiques, especially in scenes like underground rap or country rap.
Yeah, the focus seems less on the music itself and more on the conflict, the reaction it generates.
Exactly, using criticism almost like a brand identity.
Yeah.
And importantly, often going after those lesser-known artists, the ones who probably can't fight back effectively.
Right, and then you have the other side, the constructive analysts.
Yeah, people like Knox Hill, Crypt, We Scheme. They're mentioned as examples.
And their whole approach is different. They seem to genuinely get the craft, you know?
Yeah.
They talk about lyrics, flow, production choices, song structure, technical stuff.
So actual musical analysis. Yeah. Offering like balanced feedback, pointing out good things and areas for improvement, and crucially respecting the artist's effort and what they were trying to do. It's more about educating or maybe even uplifting rather than just stirring the pot.
It sounds like night and day, really. One group performs criticism for clicks. The other offers it more like a tool for growth, maybe.
That's a good way to put it.
But I wonder, even for those constructive types, can they totally escape that pull of the algorithm? You know, does thoughtful analysis get drowned out by the drama? Is it really that black and white?
That's a really fair point. It's probably a constant balancing act, even for them. The algorithm does favor engagement, whatever form it takes. So yeah, even good insights can get twisted or just lost in the noise.
Yeah.
But the source is pretty clear that for the artists themselves, especially the ones getting hit by the performative stuff, the impact is, well, it's really personal.
Yeah, I can imagine. So what does this all mean for the artists on the receiving end?
Think about pouring your heart, maybe years of work, into a song. You put it out there, vulnerable, and then someone online just rips it apart, maybe without even understanding your genre or what you were aiming for.
Devastating.
Yeah. The source talks about it leading to serious self-doubt, creative paralysis, like artists just stopping because they think, what's the point?
Oh.
And beyond the emotional toll, there are real-world consequences. Missed opportunities, maybe.
Yeah.
Like gigs, collaborations, getting on playlists, stuff that could actually build their career.
Right. Tangible setbacks.
Definitely. And in some scenes, especially tight-knit ones, getting called out like that can lead to like stigmatization,
Yeah.
being labeled negatively, and just burnout. Pure emotional exhaustion from feeling attacked for your passion, especially when it feels unfair or just for show.
Wow. It sounds like a minefield for independent creators.
Yeah.
But the source also mentions some artists manage to push back, right? Like they don't just take it. How does that work?
Yeah, it highlights the resilience some artists have. It takes a certain kind of mental toughness, I guess.
For sure.
Some manage to filter the feedback, take the useful bits, ignore the noise. Others respond directly. Maybe they make content about it or, you know, even channel it into their art, satire, commentary.
Banging it around on the critics.
Exactly. It's like reclaiming some control in a space that can feel really hostile and unpredictable.
So wrapping this up then,
Yeah.
the main point seems to be urging us as consumers of this online content to just be more aware, more critical.
Yeah, I think so. Advocating for a bit more fairness, more nuance, more respect, especially for these indie artists who are doing so much on their own without that safety net of, you know, big money or established fame.
Right.
And it really does raise that question for everyone listening. When you're watching these reaction videos or reading comments, how do you tell the difference? How do you spot genuine analysis versus something that's just performative, designed purely to get a rise out of people?
That's the critical thinking part. Yeah, being an active viewer, not just passive.
Exactly. Your judgment matters in navigating all this.
And for any artist listening who might be dealing with this kind of unfair critique, the source actually gives some concrete strategy.
Oh, yeah. Like what?
Well, things like flip it into content, use it, make satire, commentary, maybe even a diss track if that's your style.
Okay, lean into it.
Yeah, or show your process, let people see the work involved, the passion, counter the narrative by showing the realities.
Demystify it a bit, yeah.
And maybe the simplest but hardest, stay consistent. Just keep making your music. Let your body of work, your growth, speak louder than the online chatter.
That makes a lot of sense. Build your own foundation.
Right.
Because, you know, at the end of the day, reactors, online trends, they come and go, don't they?
True. Very true.
But actual artistry, stuff built on real passion, on persistence, on having something to say, that tends to stick around, that endures. It's something to think about maybe the next time you press play on a reaction video. What's fleeting and what might actually last?